Hello and welcome to another part of my melee combat system tutorial series. In this episode I'm gonna show you how to create a LockOn system similar to Dark Souls. So let's start. First, right click and create a blueprint interface, which we will call LockOn System. Open it and name the function LockOn. Compile, save and close this. Now open your master enemy. Go to the class settings and add the interface that we just created right here. So add the LockOn system interface, compile, save, and if you right click and type LockOn, you will see the event LockOn right here. And thanks to this event, we will see on which enemy we are locked on right now. So go to the viewport, add component, add sphere, type the name. I will say LockOn sphere, make it smaller and right above his head. Now go down here and set the visibility to false. Compile, save, go to the event graph and drag from the event LockOn and type flip-flop, and with A we're gonna set visibility for our LockOn sphere to visible, and from B it will be hidden. So set the visibility to false. Now we need to find out the distance between enemy and the player. So create a function and call it distance to player. And we need to trace for the objects. So line trace for objects. The start will be the location of the enemy. So get actor location. And the end location will be the location of our player. So get player pawn, get actor location, and set the return value to end. Now the object types, we will need to make an array and set it to pawn. And actors to ignore, we need to create array 2. So type make array and right click type get reference to self and set it to 0. Now expand it and the draw line will be 0.1 and the debug type will be for duration. Thanks to this we will see the tracing. You can set it off if you want to, but for the sake of the tutorial I wanted to turn it on. Now we need to break hit result from out hit, so break it, and the distance we will promote to a variable. Let's call it player to enemy distance. Now set it and return. Oh, and I forgot, we need to create another variable called can be targeted, and we need to set it to true right here. Now we can compile, save, and now we can go to the third person character and go to the viewport and add component. The component will be sphere collision. Let's call it LockOn collision. The radius will be where you can target the enemies, so bigger the radius, the bigger the distance between the player and the enemy can be. I'm gonna choose 600, it's quite big, and set the area class to none. Now go down and click on the plus where is on component begin overlap. Go to the collision again and click it on component end overlap. Now if something is overlapping our collision, we need to check if it's our master enemy. So type cast to master enemy, and if it is, we need to set timer by function name. The function name will be the distance to player function. Time will be 0.01 and it will be looping. Now if we end overlapping, we want to cast it to master enemy again, and we want to pause timer. Of course the function name will be distance to player. And after that we want to set can be targeted to false. Now we will create all the variables that we will need for this tutorial. So first will be target locked, and it will be of the type boolean. Second will be nearest target. it will be of the type master enemy. Another one will be closest target distance, it will be float. Then maximum distance, again float. Now enemy element, it will be master enemy reference. Start vector, will be vector. And the last one, found new target, and this will be of the type boolean. Now with all these variables we can start creating the LockOn system. So right click and type custom event. The event will be called LockOn Event. From here we want to check if the target locked is true. If it is false, the closest target distance we will set to 600. It needs to be the same number that you chose for the lock-on collision right here. Now we want to get all actors of class, and the class will be master enemy. From there we want to type for each loop, and first we will check if can be targeted is true. If it is, then we gonna set the array element to the enemy element variable that we created. And from that we want to get player to enemy distance and compare it with the closest target distance. And now we need to create another custom event right here, and let's give it a name LockOn done. This event will be pretty simple. Just get the enemy element and set it to the nearest target. And from that, get player to enemy distance and set it to the closest target distance. And right here in the compare float, if player to enemy distance is smaller than closest target distance, then we will type LockOn done. So what is this doing is pretty simple. First we are setting the maximum distance that LockOn can be used. Then we get all enemies around us and we will ask them if they can be targeted, and if they can, then let's say we got 2 enemies around us, so the for each loop will go 2 times. First time it will compare the player to enemy distance to our maximum distance that we set here, and if it's smaller than the maximum distance, it will go to the LockOn done function. And right here we are setting the player to enemy distance to the closest target distance. So if this runs second time, then the second enemy will be comparing his distance to the previous enemy distance. And if this is smaller, then again it will go to the LockOn done and it will set the player to enemy distance to the closest target distance. And thanks to this you can have 1000 enemies around you, but it will always lock on to the closest target. And now we need to create another custom event. It will be called set lock on to target, and this event will be triggered when the for each loop is completed. So drag off the completed and type set lock on to target. And now first thing we want to check here is if the closest target distance is smaller than the maximum distance. Of course we need to set the maximum distance to 600, the same number that we set for our lock-on collision. So if this is true, we want to get the nearest target and type lock on and choose the lock on message. And after this we want to set timer by function name. Object will be self, function name will be toggle lock on. We will create this function right now, so just wait. The time will be 0.001 and it will be looping. Now after this, just set target locked to true. With this done, we need to create the toggle lock on function. So create a new function, type the name toggle lock on, and right before we create this function we need to create another function which will be called new control rotation. It will need to have two outputs. One will be a rotator of the type rotator, and another one will be controller, and it will be of the type controller. Now in this function we will simply do some math that will say to the camera that she will always need to be rotated to the enemy that we are locked on. So first we need to get controller. From that we need to get control rotation. We need to break this rotator and make another rotator. Now the return value of controller will go right here to the return node. Now we need to get the pitch and yaw. So get your follow camera, get world location, and find a look at rotation. This will be the start, and the target will be the nearest target. Get actor location, split this return value, and make vector. The x and y will be the same, but the z value will be subtracted by 65, and the return value from vector will go to the target. And now we need to reinterpret the current rotation, which is the control rotation, to the target rotation, which is our enemy rotation. The delta time will be 0.01 and the interp speed will be 1, and the return value from reinterp 2 we need to break and get the pitch and yaw. And now from this last make rotator, set the return value to the rotator. Now with this function done, we can go back to the toggle lock on function, and we need to get the new control rotation here, and from the controller we need to set control rotation. The new rotation will be from our rotator, and now we can return. Now with this done, we can go back to the event graph and we can create the true path from here. So first thing we will do is we need to set the target locked to false. Then we need to get our nearest target and type LockOn message. And from here we need to pause timer by function name. Object will be self. The function name will be toggle lock on. And right here on the on component and overlap, we need to get target locked and check if it's true or false. If it's true, we want to check if the other actor equals to the nearest target, and if it equals, then we call function LockOn Event. Now for toggling this function, I'm gonna choose middle mouse button, and the only thing we need to do here is type LockOn Event. And now if we play and go near the enemies, you can see the tracing, and if I hit middle mouse button, you can see that it's locked on the nearest enemy. If I go here, it's gonna log on him, and right here on him. You can see that the camera is working pretty well, but we cannot switch between these three enemies, and that's what we are going to do right now. So go down here and create custom event that will be called switch to left. First we want to check if the target is locked. If it's not, we will do nothing, and if it is, we get the nearest target and type LockOn message. Now for this we will need another variable that I forgot about. So create a new variable and let's call it closest target rotation, and it will be of the type float. And we'll need to set this variable right here to 0. Then we need to set the closest target distance to 600 again, and we will need to get all actors of class. The class will be of course master enemy, and again we need to run for each loop. The first thing we want to do is we're gonna check if the array element equals to the nearest target, and if it's false we want to check if can be targeted is true. So from the array element get can be targeted. If it can be targeted we want to set the array element to the enemy element, and we need to again get player to enemy distance and get the closest target distance. We want to compare it, and now we need to do some math for this. So go down here, and first thing we need to do is get actor location, then get enemy element, get its actor location, and we need to find look at rotation. Then we need to again get actor location, get the nearest target, get his actor location, again find look at rotation. Now we need to split the struct pin for both of these, and we will need to select float, copy it for the down path 2, and right here we want to check if it's smaller than 0. If yes, then we want to plus 360 and set it to the A. And if it's not below 0, then it's gonna be just the regular number. The same thing we will do for down path here. Now we're gonna subtract these two numbers, and again we want to select float. If it is below 0, then we want to pick A, and if it's not, we want to just proceed with this number. Now we want to type in range float, and the range will be 180 to 360. And right after the compare float we want to check if this number is in range, and if it is we want to again compare floats, but this time we will set the closest target rotation, and the input will be return value from the last select float. And if it's more, we want to set the closest target rotation to the select float, and after this we need to set the enemy element to another variable that I forgot again to create. The name will be new target, and then we're gonna set the found new target to true. And we can go back here to the completed path. First we're gonna check if we found the target. If not, then we get the nearest target and type LockOn message. But if yes, we need to create another custom event right here that will be very similar to the LockOn done event. It will be called switch done, and it will be really small. Just get the new target, set it to the nearest target, and get the player enemy distance and set it to the closest target distance. Now go back to the completed path. We found the new target. We're gonna set switch done, set a lock on to target. Now we need to again somehow trigger this function. I'm gonna trigger it with mouse wheel down and just type switch to left. I'm sorry, I did a mistake here. I didn't want to add these two numbers together but to subtract them, so just hook these pins to the subtract and delete this. And now if we play and go near our enemies, you can see that we can switch to the left one, but we cannot switch to the right yet, so let's create event for that. So go down here, create another custom event, will be called switch to right. This event will be really similar to the switch to left event, but with slight different things. So first, again, we need to check if target is locked. Then we want to get the nearest target and type a LockOn message. After that, we want to set the closest rotation, but this time it won't be 0 but 180. And closest target distance, that will be again 600. Now we want to get all actors of class. Class will be master enemy. Then after that we want to check if the array element is equal to the nearest target. If it's not, we want to check if the enemy can be targeted. If he can be targeted, we want to set the enemy element to the array element. And now we need to do the math again. But to make it simpler, just go up here and copy everything. Paste it down here. And the only difference that we will need to do here is set the min to 0 and max to 179. After this we want to compare floats, and we will compare the player to enemy distance with the closest target distance. After this we're gonna check if the enemy is in range, and then we want to compare again, but now we'll compare the closest target rotation with the return value of this select float. Now if it's smaller, then we want to set it to the closest target rotation and set the enemy element to the new target, and of course found new target will be set to true. Now we need to go back to the for each loop, and upon completed path we want to do the same thing that we did with the switch left. So just copy this, paste it here, and set it to the completed path. Now we need to toggle somehow this function. So again, I'm gonna set it to mouse wheel, but this time up. And if it's pressed, switch to right. Now if we play and go near the enemies, we can hit the middle mouse button to target the closest one. If I go up, it will go to the right, and if I go down, it will go to the left. And you can see that it's working as it should be. But we can still move our camera, even though if it always go back to the LockOn target. And to fix that, we need to go up to the mouse input, and we will do simple things here. Just get target locked and type if, and only if target locked is false we can move to right and left. You can copy this for the lookup if you want your camera to be completely locked, but I don't want to. So because of that I'm gonna type select float, and if target is locked, we will pick A. The A will be 0.2 and the B will be 1, and from the axis value we will multiply it with the return value from the select float, and the return value will go to the value of our pitch input. Now if we play and go to our enemies and lock on some, I cannot move to the left and right, but I can move slightly up and slightly down, even though it always go back to the lock on target. Now if we pick up the weapon, you can see that the player is not facing the enemy. If that's what you want, you can close the tutorial right here, but if it's not what you want and you want your player always facing the character that you are locked on, we're gonna do it right now. So close this. Now to create this movement, we need to create another function which will be called movement lock on. And first we wanna check if weapon is equipped. So get is weapon equipped. Hook it to the condition, and if it is, we want to get character movement, and from this we want to set orient rotation to movement and set controller desired rotation, orient rotation to false and desired rotation to true. Then we want to set actor rotation, and we need to get somehow the new rotation. So get actor location, get nearest target, get actor location from the nearest target, find look at rotation. Now break the rotator and with only yaw make rotator and set the yaw to yaw. Now we want to again reinterp from our current rotation, and then we need to get, so get actor rotation, set it to the current, and return value from make rotator will be the target. Delta time will be 0.01 and interrupt speed will be 1. Set the return value from reinterp to the new rotation and return. Now go to the toggle lock on function and right here set the movement lock on function. And the last thing we need to do is in the event graph, right here on the LockOn Event true path, we need to get character movement and set orient rotation to movement to true and set desired rotation to false. Now if we play and lock on some enemy, you can see we still can move as before, but now if I pick up the weapon and lock on enemy, you can see that we are always facing the enemy. We don't have blank space created for it yet, but that is for another tutorial. So thanks for watching, I hope this tutorial helps you somehow, and goodbye.